Donald Trump claims he's a conservative, but the Club for Growth is taking issue with that, saying the real estate mogul is a tax-hiking liberal in love with universal health care and protectionist trade policies. Republican Pennsylvania Senator and former Club for Growth President Pat Toomey in studio with us to respond. Senator, you feel that way about Trump?
Well, Brian, I got to be honest with you. I haven't personally done the homework on Donald Trump's record. I think he's got a book out where he's cited and put forward some ideas that probably will come back to haunt him if he actually gets in this race, which I'm not at all sure that he will. But I will say the Club for Growth's a great organization, and they do their homework, so people are going to pay attention.
Yeah, he came back, did Donald Trump, and says he's against Obamacare, he's a free market, and he's against raising taxes. Does that make you feel better?
Well, if that's what he really stands for, that's encouraging. That may be some progress, movement in the right direction on his part. We'll see.
All right, but you're here now, and you also have a full slate. You know, you're a senator,
exactly.
a new senator with some big issues. Number one, raising the debt limit. You say if we default on our debt, blame Timothy Geithner. Why is it his fault?
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up. There's a great op-ed in today's Wall Street Journal. The former Assistant Treasury Secretary Emil Henry lays out exactly the argument I'm making. Here's what it boils down to. Next year, if we never borrow another dime, if we don't raise the debt limit, tax revenue that will still come into the Treasury is more than 10 times what it takes to service our debt.
Yep.
So why in the world would a Treasury Secretary choose to default on our debt? He wouldn't. And it would be the wrong thing to do. It would be disastrous. It isn't going to happen. And they ought to stop propagating this myth, because what the administration is trying to do is simply intimidate Republicans into voting for a debt limit increase without cutting spending or making the reforms that we need. We can't go down this road any further.
Here's Geithner on that very issue. Let's listen.
This debate about the debt limit, which is a ridiculous debate to have. I mean, the idea that the United States would take the risk, people start to believe we won't pay our bills, is a ridiculous proposition. Irresponsible, completely unacceptable basic risk for us to take.
But he does have a plan should the debt limit not be raised. It's going to be some massive cuts.
It's very disruptive.
And he's got to go find money elsewhere.
It's like a partial government shutdown because, you know, the government will take in through tax revenue about 70% of everything they want to spend, and without the other 30%, that's very disruptive. But it's not a default on our debt. We ought to have an honest discussion about how we're going to get spending under control and not continue with these trillion-dollar deficits. This is the problem I have with the administration. They want to continue spending as usual. That's not sustainable.
Right, and if you keep just making the people that want to cut bad guys, it's going to be hard to work through it. Meanwhile, Senator Harry Reid just got back from China, and he says, I'm going to have a vote on Chairman Ryan's plan that passed the House for a budget going forward. How do you feel about that vote? How would you vote?
Well, first, let's look at just how cynical this is if Harry Reid goes ahead and does this. This is the man who led the Senate last year and chose not to even offer a budget. So the biggest enterprise in the world, the U.S. federal government spending $3.6 trillion, did so without a budget because Senator Reid didn't want to admit to the American people the kind of spending and deficits and tax increases he's for. Paul Ryan and the House Republicans have offered a very, very responsible plan that gets us on a...
The president says it's radical.
It's radical to work your way towards a balanced budget, to reform unsustainable entitlement programs, to simplify the tax code so we can have strong economic growth.
Right.
That's common sense.
Are you hesitant to vote on this and go on the record?
Well, I don't know if we'll have a vote. I support what they have done. Now, I'm working with some of my colleagues to have a Senate version. I hope that we Republicans will have an alternative in the Senate. Frankly, it will borrow heavily from the very constructive ideas that Paul Ryan and the House Republicans advance.
You have a full plate, a big agenda, and we appreciate the minutes you gave us here at Fox and Friends.
Good to see you.
Great job, Senator. Meanwhile, we're going to be back from London with Gretchen Carlson.